Ever wondered what happens when a simple monster core transforms into the key to ultimate power? In today's recap, we're diving deep into an epic tale of strength, betrayal, and hidden potential. Watch the full video as we break down the thrilling events and characters of this manhwa. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. The story begins in a dilapidated city, surrounded by the wreckage of abandoned buildings and rubble. In the midst of this desolate scene, a flock of terrifying monsters closes in on a girl. The main character, Zwolfan, holds the girl protectively in his arms, his face filled with determination and fear. As the monsters close in, Zwolfan's mind races, thinking to himself, "Are we really going to die here?" But even with the overwhelming odds against him, he doesn't give up. He drives his sword deep into the ground, a last stand, as the monsters rush toward them. Zwolfan's resolve hardens, and he swears to himself that he won't die here. He must survive. Some time ago, in Zhongbei City's prison, Zwolfan sat across from his father, Zhuhiu, deep in conversation. His father was a broken man, imprisoned for something he had done 8 years ago. Zwolfan had always been told to wait until he was older to hear the truth, and now, at 18 years old, he demanded to know. He asked his father about the events that transpired when the monsters attacked Donghe City, a tragedy that shook the very foundation of China. According to the official reports, Zhuhiu had abandoned his post and fled the city just before the monsters arrived, making him responsible for the deaths of countless people. The scandal had ruined his reputation, and as a result, Zwolfan's life was marked with shame and ridicule. For the past 8 years, Zwolfan had been tainted with the stigma of being the son of a traitor to the motherland. He had been expelled from school, his peers mocking him for his father's betrayal. No one wanted to associate with him. Even in the hospital, where he went to donate blood, people would point and whisper about how they couldn't possibly accept blood from the son of a traitor. But Zwolfan held on to the belief that one day, he would clear his father's name and restore his family's honor. However, his father, resigned to his fate, told Zwolfan that it was pointless to dwell on the past. A crime had been committed, and Zhuhiu had already admitted to his guilt. He urged his son to leave Zhongbei City, to change his identity, and to live without the burden of his shameful lineage. The weight of being branded the son of a traitor was too heavy for Zwolfan to bear. In a fit of frustration, Zwolfan slammed his palm on the table. "This is a lie," he thought. My father is not the traitor they say he is. He risked his life for this country. He stood up abruptly and stormed out of the room. As he left, a prison guard called after him, mocking him as the traitor's son. The guard further explained that if Zwolfan wanted to visit his father again, the cost would be exorbitant, 10,000 yuan, a steep price that had only increased due to his father's treasonous actions. Zwolfan, his anger boiling over, clenched his fist. He had to uncover the truth. His father's loyalty could not have been so easily dismissed. He thought about how much his father had sacrificed for the country and how those sacrifices had been repaid with accusations of betrayal. Zwolfan was determined to reveal the truth, no matter the cost. Zwolfan walked through the bustling streets of Zhongbei City, reflecting on his financial struggles. Every month, he was forced to spend a large sum of money just to visit his father, and his current salary from his mercenary work as a reserve Starfall fighter barely made a dent in his expenses. A full-health Starfall fighter had strong stats in all categories, but Zwolfan's abilities were lacking. Only his intelligence and agility were decent. His speed and reaction had improved a little, but his strength and health had remained stagnant for months. In order to clear his father's name, Zwolfan knew he needed more. More money, more power. He had to push himself. He thought about selling the pendant his mother had given him, made from a fragment of a fallen star. It was his most precious possession, but he quickly dismissed the thought. There had to be another way. He entered the mercenary union, hoping to find a high-ranking mission that would earn him the money he needed. The moment he walked in, he could hear whispers behind him, mocking him for still being a reserve fighter after 3 years of training. Some even said he would never make it as a full Starfall fighter, that he was doomed to remain weak forever. Ignoring the gossip, Zwolfan made his way to the office of the union's manager, Uncle Gao. He asked if there were any E-rank missions available. Uncle Gao scoffed, pointing out that with Zwolfan's current skills, attempting an E-rank mission would be suicidal. Even a lowly F-rank mission was dangerous for someone as undertrained as him. But Zwolfan, desperate, insisted. Uncle Gao sighed, clearly irritated, but after a pause, he revealed that there was indeed an E-rank mission that might be suitable. Someone was willing to pay a large sum of money for a scout in the team. The mission involved clearing out a sanctuary of E-rank monsters. The danger was high, but the reward was worth it. Zwolfan quickly agreed, knowing that this was his only chance. He prepared himself, gathering his weapons and equipment. The mission would involve a team of Starfall fighters, both beginner and intermediate level. His role would be to scout the area, and if he did well, he would earn a large sum of money. When he arrived at the team's gathering point, he saw a girl standing at the center of the group. She introduced herself as Muin Yue, the squad leader. Zwolfan was struck by her equipment, which was clearly from a higher category than his own. The Starfall armor she wore was crafted from the core of a monster, a rare and valuable resource. Only mid-tier fighters were strong enough to use such equipment, and Zwolfan wondered how much time it would take for him to reach that level. Before he could respond, a man in the group jumped in front of him, greeting him with a mock-friendly handshake. Zwolfan's instincts flared, and he immediately braced himself, but the man's grip tightened, causing Zwolfan pain. A fellow squad member told the man to stop, and the situation was quickly diffused. The man handed Zwolfan a contract, instructing him to read it carefully and sign it if he had no objections. Zwolfan scanned the contract and noticed a clause that stated that reserve fighters were not typically allowed to join an E-rank mission. He hesitated for a moment, but ultimately decided to sign. With this, he was officially part of the team. The team moved out to the lair of the E-rank monsters. A monster lair was a place where mutated creatures gathered, and after the world was torn apart by chaos, these areas became highly dangerous. Firearms were ineffective against the mutated monsters, so melee weapons were essential. Weapons crafted from monster parts were highly prized and used by high-level fighters to showcase their power and status. Zwolfan's first task was to scout the area, and as he moved ahead of the group, he noticed strange sounds near the river. As he investigated, he spotted an E-rank fish lizard, a massive, mutated amphibian with thick scales that were impervious to most weapons. The fish lizard's sharp fangs could tear through metal, and its tongue had an incredible reach. Zwolfan took aim with his bow and fired, but just as the arrow was about to hit, the fish lizard quickly closed its eyes, causing the arrow to bounce harmlessly off its thick scales. The monster growled, enraged, and soon a pack of them rushed at Zwolfan. He quickly turned and ran, trying to lead the creatures away from the rest of the group. As he ran, Zwolfan noted that the monsters were faster than he had expected. Their speed was much higher than the data had indicated. He had to think quickly if he was going to survive. The fish lizard's scales made it nearly invulnerable, and its sharp teeth could cut through anything. But Zwolfan knew that all monsters had a weak point. He just needed to figure out when and where to strike. The monster stuck its tongue out again, and Zwolfan darted out from around the corner. In that instant, he pulled 3 arrows simultaneously, aiming for the fish lizard's weak point, the eyes and the long tongue. 3 arrows pierced its tongue, and Zwolfan couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction from the hit. Clearly, even someone like him, knowing the monster's weakness, could defeat an E-rank monster. But as the monster began to retract its tongue, the arrows were forced out, leaving Zwolfan petrified with surprise. The monster pushed the arrows out effortlessly. Ordinary weapons were useless, even when striking exactly at the weak spot. He quickly dodged another attack and thought to himself, so this is the true strength of an E-rank monster. It's so fast I can barely react. Is this really how I'm going to die? Panicking, he ran toward the exit of the building. As he jumped out of the hole, a loud rumble erupted behind him. He was extremely lucky this time. Just a little more, and he would have been done for. Ordinary arrows were only useful as bait. If he had tips made from an E-rank monster, he would be able to hunt low-level monsters alone. But now, he wondered whether he should spend all his money on this venture. Racing up to the building, he informed the squad that the fish lizard was nearby. The order to prepare for battle was given immediately. The monster soon flew into the building, where it was met by Muhan, who blocked it with his shield. Muhan, 35 years old and an intermediate Starfall fighter, held his ground while Muinyu, 18 years old and an entry-level Starfall fighter, drew her sword and attacked. Zwolfan watched in admiration as they fought. They cleared out an E-rank hideout with ease, just as expected from such a skilled squad. Zwolfan's role this time was easier than he thought. Muinyu sliced the monster, and Muhan praised her, calling her as skilled as ever. Even after being sliced in half, the monster was still alive, lacking a lower body but still fighting fiercely. Muhan noticed and shouted a warning. The monster was preparing a death counterattack. He told everyone to avoid its blow at all costs. With that, he pushed Zwolfan forward, signaling it was time for him to play his part as cannon fodder. Zwolfan saw the huge mouth of the monster in front of him and felt a surge of fear, but he managed to avoid the blow and fall to the ground. Quickly, he aimed his crossbow and shot at the monster's eye. In the next moment, Mu-Yin raised her sword over the monster, and blood spurted out. Zwolfan exhaled, relieved, as the system's voice announced the first kill of an E-rank monster. The system startup and owner adaptation were activated, but Zwolfan was left puzzled. What is that sound? Am I hearing things? He wondered. Mu-Yin called out to Muhan, asking him to inspect the monster's remains for a monster core. Muhan was surprised by the request. Wasn't that supposed to be her job? She glared at him, her hand on the hilt of her sword, as if to remind him that she hadn't missed what he had just said. After a while, they gathered around a fire, and Muinyu approached Zwolfan with some food. She mentioned it was a new type of food for the squad that quickly restores strength. She smiled and praised him for being an excellent scout. Zwolfan thanked her, thinking she wasn't as indifferent as she appeared. Meanwhile, Muhan, wiping dirt from his face, muttered about the terrible stench of the monster corpses. He then told Zwolfan that for a reserve fighter, he was good at drawing out monsters. He also mentioned, half joking, that it was a pity Zwolfan's body type would make it hard for him to reach mid-tier fighter status. If he planned to make money as a mercenary, he would need to team up with others and be their whipping boy. Muinyu interrupted him, telling him to stop talking. Muhan apologized for speaking too frankly, and the squad laughed. Muhan then told Zwolfan not to take his words too seriously. He liked playing pranks on people. Zwolfan thought that Muhan seemed harmless, but he was still suspicious. That guy had definitely pushed him on purpose during the battle. As time passed, Muinyu approached Zwolfan again. Noticing her, he offered to stand guard while she rested, saying he was of no use in battle anyway. She replied that she was only fulfilling the terms of their agreement. 2 people were supposed to stand guard. She also asked him where he was from. His accent didn't sound like he was from Jiangbei, and he suggested she might be from Jinhai, a northern region where monsters first started to become a serious threat. She replied that this task was a rite of passage for her family members when they came of age. Zwolfan then asked her why she was here. With her level, it seemed dangerous to be in a place like this. She explained that it was the test her family members underwent when they came of age. She then asked him the same question. What was he doing here? Before Zwolfan could respond, the ground beneath them began to tremble and crack rapidly. Both of them were startled. The earth collapsed beneath them, and they fell into a pit. Zwolfan tried to grab onto something but failed. At the edge of the hole, a man stood watching them fall. They landed in the subway, and Zwolfan breathed a sigh of relief. He wondered why they were so lucky. As they regained their footing, Muinyu asked if he had finished inspecting the area. Was the crash an accident? Zwolfan examined the rock beneath them, estimating it was at least 20 meters deep. He told her it was probably the soil causing the collapse, and that they would need to find another way out. Muinyu asked if he knew where to go. Zwolfan, having memorized the metro map, confidently pointed in the direction of the tunnel. He thought to himself that this was the result of his self-training as a scout. As they proceeded, Zwolfan noted that the path was getting lighter, signaling they were headed in the right direction. He surreptitiously looked at Muinyu, wondering how she was able to see so clearly in the dark. He knew that middle-class fighters like her had night vision as good as day vision, a skill far beyond the reach of any night vision device. Suddenly, she stopped, and Zwolfan, sensing something was wrong, asked what was happening. She replied that there were some rustling noises ahead, ear-rank monsters, more than one. Zuofan was surprised, wondering why he hadn't heard anything. Muinyu explained that it wasn't surprising since her sword had told her so. She warned that the monsters were approaching, and Zuofan readied himself for battle. At the end of the tunnel, red eyes glowed in the darkness. The fish lizards rushed toward them. Zuofan thought there were too many of them. Muinyu told him to step back, preparing to cut through the monsters with her sword. Zuofan protested, offering to help, but she interrupted him, ordering him to retreat. He would only get in her way. Reluctantly, Zuofan stepped back and watched as Muinyu, using her sword sense, swiftly cut through the monsters. He marveled at her skill, thinking that this must be her true strength. An ear-rank monster was usually far weaker than a mid-tier fighter, but Muinyu's swordsmanship was something else. Just then, one of the monsters lunged at Zuofan, its sharp teeth sinking into his arm. He swung his blade in defense, and blood dripped from his trembling hand. Leaning against the wall, Zuofan realized that monsters of this level were far too powerful for him. The system then announced that another ear-rank monster had been killed. Zuofan was confused by the system's voice again. What was it? Before he could dwell on it, he focused on the task at hand. Muinyu's blade dripped with monster blood as she finished off the last of the creatures. She told him they were done and suggested they head for the exit. They arrived at the exit only to find the passage blocked. Zuofan was surprised and asked what had happened. It was as though they were locked in from the outside. Muinyu, sensing something off, suddenly pointed her sword at his throat. He quickly asked what she was doing. She replied that she had every reason to be suspicious of him. Zuofan swallowed nervously, unsure of what to say. She asked how to interpret this situation. With a sigh, she sheathed her sword, admitting she was just testing him. Zuofan thought to himself that this situation was starting to feel like an internal power struggle within the Starfall family. Since the introduction of Starfall fighters, many families had joined the Union, and it was becoming increasingly clear that something bigger was at play. Families like theirs were referred to as the Starfall families. Their strict code followed the inhuman dogma: the strongest survive, and the weakest meet death. In these families, if one wished to stand out, they had to undertake perilous missions, like hunting in monster lairs and facing off against rival relatives. Muinyu asked if there were any hidden exits no one knew about. He closed his eyes, taking a moment to think. He visualized a map of the city and recalled a location. Out of breath from running, he said he remembered a place they had just passed through. While the exit was blocked, there were a few cracks, and he had inquired about it. He shared that there was an underground passage they could use to escape. Muinyu turned to him, her eyes full of gratitude. She felt incredibly lucky to be on the same team as him. Zuofan spoke up, saying that since they were on the same page, he wanted to admit something he should have said much earlier. Muinyu nodded, encouraging him to speak. He hesitated and then asked if they could slow down a little, as he was struggling to keep up. She agreed, and after a short while, they stopped to rest. Zuofan collapsed onto the ground, complaining that the air was so suffocating it was draining his stamina. Muinyu, understanding his exhaustion, acknowledged that he was a reserved soldier who had taken on an E-rank mission. She then asked if he was in desperate need of money to the point that he was risking his life. Zuofan responded mentally, admitting that money was the reason he had put himself in harm's way. He touched the pendant around his neck and thought about the 2 years left until his father's sentence would be executed. He needed to uncover the truth. He recalled a moment from his childhood when his parents were still together. His mother had placed her hand on the window and expressed a wish to visit the seaside where she and his father had first met. His father promised they would go after he had dealt with the monsters, and they would enjoy the coastline again. That year, his mother died during a minor monster attack while trying to save someone. He was too young to fully understand how the world worked, and he later saw her name, Jing Junlan, on the list of casualties. He couldn't comprehend why his father, who had lost his love to the monsters, didn't fight back during the attack. There had to be more to it, something his father wasn't revealing. Muinyu, sensing the shift in mood, apologized for prying too much into his personal life. Zuofan didn't respond and started to get up, suggesting they move on. After some time, they reached the entrance to the subway, and stones began flying out. Zuofan commented that they had finally made it out, but as he caught his breath, Mienyu noticed arrows flying toward them. She quickly shielded him, and they took cover together. Arrows pierced the ground around them, and Mienyu cried out in pain. Zuofan turned to her, realizing one of the arrows had struck her back. He identified it as poisoned and urged her to stay calm. He removed the arrow and helped her sit up, telling her he had the antidote with him. As she tried to breathe steadily, she shockingly muttered that she never imagined he would betray her. Muhan, appearing at the top with the rest of the squad, laughed, mocking his dear niece for not being closer to him. He admired her strength, saying it was no surprise she was considered the most brilliant member of the current generation of the Mu family. Zuofan, peeking from behind cover, realized what this meant. The mission was a trap set for Mienyu. This was the so-called Starfall family at work. Muhan raised his sword and reminded her that her father had saved his family and even betrothed her third aunt to him. He asked why she was questioning him. He then went on to claim that everyone dies chasing after wealth, and as long as this world is driven by gain, betrayal is inevitable. He activated the detonator, signaling the end of their conversation, and said goodbye. A massive explosion erupted, flames flaring up below them. He then asked Muji if the monsters near the river had all been dealt with. Muji assured him that none of them survived. Muhan laughed and said they would spin the story to make it seem like the son of a traitor had attacked their brilliant relative. Who would ever doubt it? After the explosion, Mienyu and Zuofan found themselves in a cave, having narrowly escaped the blast. Inyu was bleeding, but Zuofan remained by her side, supporting her. Despite the explosion, they were now surrounded by monsters with glowing red eyes, in overwhelming numbers. Mienyu, realizing the danger, began screaming in panic, realizing the arrow's poison had been mixed with a bait drug that attracted fish lizards. Zuofan, enraged, confirmed that the attack had been meticulously planned to kill her. Mienyu, understanding their intentions, stated that they not only wanted to kill her, but also frame him for the entire incident. Zuofan feared that if they both died here, his father would take the fall, and any reprieve before the execution would be cancelled. But he quickly realized he had no choice but to survive. His fists clenched in determination as he noticed a monster attacking them with its tongue. He yelled at Mienyu to be careful, but she suddenly ran forward, attacking the monster with her sword and severing its tongue. She turned to him and declared she could still fight. Zuofan, unsure of what to do next, decided to think quickly. He tried to recall the map of the area and found a route they could take to escape. After a few moments, he shouted that he found an exit point. As they sprinted, they were pursued by a horde of monsters. Zuofan recalled that the passage he had earlier examined was blocked, but it had several cracks. If they inspected the bottom closely, they might be able to clear the stone blockages. Mienyu asked how far they still had to go. Zuofan replied that they only had 3 more forks to get through. They pushed themselves to run faster, but Zuofan soon realized that Mienyu's condition was worsening. Her hand was darkening from the poison, and if they kept fighting, the antidote would become useless. They reached the spot where the gap had formed earlier, and Zuofan excitedly realized they might be able to escape. However, Mienyu was doubtful. The monsters were catching up fast, and escape seemed impossible. She told him to go ahead and hide while she delayed the monsters, grabbing her sword. Zuofan was shocked by her willingness to sacrifice herself. She told him it was her fault they were in this situation, and that the poison was attracting the fish lizards. If she couldn't escape, there was no point in holding him back. She began attacking the monsters, one by one, buying him time. Zuofan, determined to save her, cleared the path and set a trap. He called out to her to hurry. She managed to slip under the trap just in time, and the monsters charged straight into it. Zuofan urged her to run faster, as the passage would collapse again soon. They ran, but just as they escaped, the wall behind them collapsed, sending dust flying. Zuofan stopped, catching his breath, and said they had made it. Looking back at the debris, Mienyu thanked him for his quick thinking. Before they could relax, a new wave of monsters appeared, having survived the collapse. Mienyu unsheathed her sword and told Zuofan to run, but she collapsed from exhaustion. Zuofan, confused and frantic, lifted her up, holding her sword. He realized he still wasn't strong enough to fight these monsters alone. He shouted at them, challenging them to come at him. Suddenly, a massive monster lunged at them, its mouth wide open. Zuafon reacted quickly, taking the sword and severing the monster's head. But the monster's tongue lashed out, cutting into his chest. As he bled, he apologized mentally to his father, wishing he could return and clear his name. They both fell to the ground, surrounded by monsters, and Zuafon feared this would be the end. But then, the system window flashed, announcing the activation of the God of War system, as Zuafon had killed 3 fish lizards. The accumulated energy triggered the distribution of 100 attribute points. The system determined his condition and began distributing points: 41 in intelligence, 28 in health, and 46 in dexterity. Zuafon was stunned. What was going on? Was this a hallucination before death? But when he looked at his chest, he realized the wound had healed. He was no longer in pain. The monsters, noticing his movement, turned toward him, and he prepared to face them. His mind raced, wondering how his dexterity had become so developed. The sword in his hand seemed to have endless power. The system's description identified it as the Starfall sword, a rare weapon weighing 20 kilograms, embedded with a high-quality E-class beast core. He realized that the sword's power had boosted his strength, allowing him to fight at a higher level. With newfound power, Zuafon began attacking, easily evading the monsters' tongues and cutting through them with precision. 2 monsters fell with a single swing. With his enhanced abilities, he felt confident he could take on even more formidable opponents. The system urged him to stay focused on the fight, and he prepared himself for what was to come. He swung his sword with joy, marveling at his abilities and wondering if he could finally take control of his own fate. With a sense of satisfaction, he plunged the sword into the ground and reflected on how everything had worked out. He realized that he truly possessed strength, having survived the relentless onslaught of the surrounding monsters. As he glanced at the system window displaying his stats, he took note of his data: intelligence 41, health and strength 28, agility 46, and 21 points available for distribution. He briefly considered distributing the attribute points, but then his thoughts shifted to enrollment. There were more urgent matters at hand. The sound of the tunnel's collapse signaled the retreat of the fish lizards to the surface. With the underground area now safer, the corpses of monsters littered the area near the exit, ensuring their relatives wouldn't show up for a while. Bandaging his hands, he pondered the situation. His immediate priority was dealing with the poison in Inue's body. The monster bait they had used was a major problem for them. He looked at Inue lying unconscious, filled with regret. Gently shaking her shoulders, he apologized for the humiliation she would have to endure in order for them to escape alive together. The monster bait, a liquid with a specific scent, could drive fish lizards to madness. After the meteorite fell that night, the world had drastically changed. Not only the fauna but the flora as well. Various reagents could now be made from mutated plants, with monster bait being one of them. Inue lay unconscious, and Fan thought about what to do next. He realized that while dealing with her wounds was relatively easy, the smell of the bait wouldn't go away. They were still in danger. Then he had an idea. The solution seemed to be using another reagent smell to counter the bait. Grabbing a flask of liquid with a foul odor, he held it near Inue and covered his nose in apology. The strange-smelling medicine was made from the excrement of a skunk monster, and most creatures would avoid it. This was the key to Fan's survival over the years. After carefully bandaging Inue's arms and legs, he completed the exhausting task. The stench was so overpowering it caused his nose to bleed. With the wounds treated and the bait smell now neutralized, they were safe for the time being. Thanks to the fish lizard's relocation, they had a brief respite. However, Finn realized they were still trapped. Leaning against the wall, he resolved to understand what had happened to him. That's when he noticed that the pendant containing the meteorite fragment was missing. Had he somehow become the system of the God of War? He opened the system window to check his stats: slight wounds, Starfall fighter, intelligence 41, health and strength 28, agility 46, with 21 points unallocated. Activating the God of War system seemed to have greatly boosted his stats and healed his wounds. It was too fast. Was this some sort of cheat? Only an average fighter could use Starfall equipment, so how was he able to wield it? As he pondered the meaning behind each attribute, he realized that health represented recovery and environmental adaptation, strength was physical power and attack capability, agility indicated speed and reflexes, and intelligence seemed to correspond to mental abilities. His intelligence had always been a mystery. Perhaps that was why he could use the Starfall gear. His IQ was over 40. The system window displayed that Fan had 21 unallocated attribute points. He needed to distribute them soon to increase his combat potential. Wondering how to use the God of War system, he waited for a response, but the system remained silent. He cursed the irresponsible system, wishing it could offer guidance on how to allocate the points. Suddenly, the system window changed. Could he really adjust the stats with just a thought? He decided to try adding points to strength and quickly felt the difference. Just 2 points made him feel stronger, confirming that the God of War system worked. Fan marveled at the sensation. Next, he distributed his points between health and strength, boosting his health to 37 and strength to 40, while his agility and intelligence remained the same. He felt his combat power surge as a result. Meanwhile, a monster approached down the cave corridor, its heightened senses detecting the presence of Fan. The creature, a fish lizard, was easily dispatched by Fan. The system notified him that he'd gained 3 attribute points for the kill. Fan was surprised. 3 points for one fish lizard? If he killed all the monsters here, he wondered, could he significantly increase his power? There were at least 50 more of these monsters underground, but Fan was focused on the bigger picture. He realized that as a fighter, his true potential lay in advancing to the highest category. He tried to keep calm, thinking that for now, he needed to aim for the average fighter level. Adding the 3 points to his health brought him closer to that goal. His strength had increased by 50%, and he felt the confidence to face whatever came next. With renewed determination, he declared the hunt open. Moving further into the cave, he thought about the materials he could extract from the fish lizards. Each one was worth 5,000 win, but he could only carry a couple of fangs and scales. As he walked along the old train tracks, he made a loud noise, hoping to draw out more monsters. Sure enough, the creatures, whose hearing was far superior to their eyesight, rushed to meet him. Fan swung his sword, cutting through the monsters with precision. Despite the initial difficulty in dealing with them, he soon found himself able to take on 2 at a time. His Starfall sword had boosted him to an impressive level. By the time he had killed 16 or 17 fish lizards, he could handle them with ease. The system window popped up again, announcing that he had earned more attribute points. However, he soon realized that the number of points gained from each kill had decreased. After advancing to the average fighter level, he now only received 1 point per fish lizard. He'd been naive to think the points would remain as high as before. Nevertheless, his strength was now considerable, and he felt confident that he could escape the subway with enrollment, as long as no stronger monsters appeared. But as he pressed on, he stepped into some liquid, only to realize it was the scent of a mutant monster. Hiding behind the wall, he saw a 2-headed gator mutant, a powerful creature with immense combat potential. The gator mutant was attacking the other monsters with terrifying speed, instantly killing 3 fish lizards. Its strength was on par with the highest category of fighters, and Fan knew he had no chance of defeating it. Realizing the danger, he decided to retreat and formulate a new plan. Returning to enrollment, Fan noticed that the bait's scent had almost faded, but her wounds were severe, and he worried how she would defend herself in this condition. With a heavy heart, he applied some liquid from a flask to a cloth and pressed it against her wounds. Their only way out now was blocked by the 2-headed gator, which was dangerously close to the exit. Fan was unsure whether to risk it, but his determination to protect enrollment pushed him forward. Suddenly, enrollment woke up, and Fan felt awkward about what he was doing. She looked at him with suspicion, but, after a brief moment, grabbed her sword to threaten him. In a mix of shame and panic, Fan tried to explain, only to be struck by enrollment in response. She sat down, ready to eat, and asked if he had been hiding his true power. Fan, not wanting to reveal the God of War system just yet, explained that his father was a former military commander, Zhuhyu. Yue, surprised, asked if he was the same Zhuhyu associated with the fall of Donghai. Fan realized that if he revealed too much, he could attract unwanted attention. But for now, the most important thing was to figure out how to kill the two-headed gator and escape. Yue agreed, and together they approached the creature cautiously. Looking at the gator, Yue thought about its unique abilities. 2 heads, a long tongue for long-range attacks, and a bite strong enough to gnaw through metal. Its armor-like skin was practically impenetrable, and unlike fish lizards, the gator didn't have any obvious weaknesses. To defeat it, Fan would need to fully unlock the potential of his Starfall sword. After speaking these words, she activated the Starfall weapon. In monster fighting, people typically rely on the Starfall weapon, which is known for its immense power. The key to its strength lies in the beast core embedded in it, which harnesses great energy. This weapon is sharp enough to slice through the skin of an E-level monster. However, the two-headed monster gator is a mutated creature, and its resilience makes it resistant to such sharpness. They sat across from each other and discussed their strategy. She revealed that, in addition to its inherent abilities, this monster has undergone a secondary change that has increased its armor by at least 50%. They had used this sword to cut through the skin of a fish lizard, which Fan had extracted, and he realized how difficult it had been to acquire the skin of the fish lizard. His efforts and money seemed to have been wasted. The monster gator has no clear vulnerabilities, and the most effective way to defeat it would be to sever both of its heads. To do this, they would need to unleash the true power of the Starfall sword. Fan was deep in thought, feeling regretful about the time and money he had spent, but ultimately, he agreed with her. She then asked if he had any questions and noticed that he seemed troubled. He asked her where she had gotten the dagger, as he hadn't noticed it when treating her wounds earlier. She was immediately furious with this question. She said, "We're in a dangerous situation, and you're worried about such trivial matters? If you want to defeat the monster gator, you need to focus on learning how to use a sword." They both stood up. Yue picked up a piece of the fish lizard skin and instructed Fan to watch carefully as she was about to demonstrate her true strength. Fan thought that, despite the skin being folded several times, it was still strong enough to resist a sword cut. However, Yue knelt in front of the skin, took out her sword, and activated a magic technique. With swift movements, she sliced the skin into several small pieces. Fan was stunned by how simple it seemed. She barely exerted any force. What kind of power was this? Yue explained that in order to unlock the sword's true power, the beast core must resonate, making the blade flicker and sharpen. However, she cautioned that this burst of power couldn't be used endlessly, as the core would be destroyed after a few uses. Fan now understood why she hadn't experimented with the sword before and had kept it for critical moments. She also mentioned that, due to her injuries, she wouldn't be able to endure the backlash from the sword's power, so he would need to learn how to activate it. She gave him 3 days to do so. After some time, Fan continued to battle the fish lizards while Yue observed from a distance. He thought that, for the beast core to respond, he would need to engage in many more battles with monsters. A gifted fighter would take about 6 months to achieve a response, but most people wouldn't live long enough to reach that level. Using magic, he dealt with the fish lizards relatively quickly and tried to convince himself that he, Zuofan, was different. Despite his young age, he was already a middle-class fighter, a true prodigy who would surely succeed. He swung his sword again, easily dispatching more monsters. Blood from the fish lizards splattered on his sword, and he muttered, "It's only been half a day, and I'm already exhausted." Yue commented that constant combat would eventually help him achieve the required resonance, but Fan couldn't feel any change at all. Yue was frustrated and thought, who remembers her when they speak ill of her? In just half a day of relentless battle with the fish lizards, Fan hadn't come anywhere close to achieving resonance. While it was normal for most people to take at least half a month, it had only taken her 2 days with her innate swordsmanship. However, they only had 3 days. If Fan didn't succeed, Mu Han, who would participate in the inheritance ceremony of the Mu family, would suffer dire consequences, and even her father could be affected. Apologizing to Fan, she noted that, at the moment, she had no choice but to rely on him. At that moment, Fan opened a system window that notified him that the Starfall sword was still inactive. The system offered him the option to spend 10 attribute points to activate it. He wondered whether to go ahead with it, and the system window explained that in order to activate an E-class Starfall weapon, the wielder must be at least a middle-class fighter and have at least 10 points available for distribution. Fan realized that he'd have to spend all the points he had earned in half a day, but after reflecting, he decided to activate the sword. The blade shimmered with golden sparks as the weapon's true power activated. Fan swung the newly empowered sword, and the sharpness was incredible, cutting through the fish lizards like tofu. Inoue noticed this and was surprised. She wondered how he had activated the sword so quickly. She covered her mouth in astonishment and thought, "What terrifying talent!" But suddenly, something was wrong. Fan collapsed among the slain monsters, his body twitching from the strain. Inoue scolded him for overexerting himself, noting that the core overloads the user, and that Fan didn't even know the basics yet he was trying to look impressive. Despite this, she was mentally thankful for his actions. Later, Fan approached the two-headed monster gator and yelled, "Go to hell!" He assumed an attacking position, using his newly activated sword. The strength that springs from hopelessness is always blinding, and a bright light emanated from his upcoming attack. The monster growled loudly, baring its vile fangs and sticking out its terrifying tongue. But Fan, undeterred, was happy to have finally closed the distance between them. He crouched down slightly, readying his sword. Fan thought that if he could sever the head of this fish lizard monster, it would weaken the monster gator. As he approached, the monster writhed, growling loudly, and its massive tail swiped at him. The monster's speed was astonishing, and Fan was sent flying to the side after a strong impact. Blood leaked from his mouth, but he tried to get back on his feet. Inoue, watching from behind a stone wall, shouted, "Zuafon!" Fan realized he had been inattentive, not expecting the monster's tail to hit with such force. The monster didn't give him any time to react or activate the weapon's response. As the creature closed in, Fan tried to evade its jaws, but he only narrowly avoided being caught. The monster's jaw snapped shut just as he jumped away. Before Fan could even finish his thought about the terrifying power of the monster's jaw, the monster gator was back in front of him, its mouth wide open and its long tongue reaching for him. Fan leaped to the side, but the monster quickly followed, destroying the ground where he had landed with its tail. Fan's eyes widened with realization. Something wasn't right, and before he could think further, the monster's tongue struck him from behind, leaving him bleeding. He cursed under his breath, "Damn it! This is what an E-level mutant is like. I can't find its weak point." He ducked behind the wall and thought that perhaps the God of War system, with its strength equivalent to a middle-class fighter, could help him master the monster's response, but he had overestimated himself. Inoue shouted for him to retreat, saying he couldn't handle the monster now. Fan responded that she was still injured and needed to hide as soon as possible. He explained that mutant monsters possess strengths and weaknesses that are tied to the characteristics of their mutations, ranging from medium to long-range attacks, and with nearly impenetrable skin, they could both defend and attack like a boss-level monster. He realized that, in order to defeat the monster gator, he would need to master E-class swordsmanship or possess innate skills like Inoue's sword sense. However, he simply couldn't afford to retreat. If he didn't escape with her within 3 days, he would be labeled her murderer, and his father would likely face forced execution. Fan was reminded of his mother's disappearance 12 years ago, when a wave of monsters hit Donghi City. She had helped people evacuate but vanished herself, and her body had never been found. Yet, everyone believed she was dead. His father had told his late wife not to worry, and that he would take care of Fan and exterminate all the monsters on Earth to avenge her. Meanwhile, the monster gator attacked again, smashing through his cover. Fan dodged and stood, stating that he wanted to go home, uncover the truth, and clear his father's name. He was prepared to put his life on the line to do so. The system announced that it had detected a desire to fight to the death, and perception skill was activated. The initial perception skill allows the user to sense all changes within a 10-meter radius. The system displayed the area around Fan, and he realized that the two-headed monster gator had slowed down, giving him a chance to attack. Fan seized the opportunity and, in a flash, severed both of the monster's heads. After Fan defeats the two-headed monster gator, he stands over the fallen creature, breathing heavily. He's surprised at his sudden surge of power and the sharpness of his new sword, which cut through the beast effortlessly. As the monster's massive body falls, Fan turns to Inoue, who is watching him in astonishment. He tells her that they should leave, to which Inoue, still stunned by his success, nods in agreement. The system then notifies Fan that he's earned 3 attribute points for killing the mutated E-class monster, and his efforts have been rewarded. Fan wonders whether these attribute points are equivalent to the level of challenge he just faced. As the system confirms that the monster's core was collected, it also reports the acquisition of 2 E-rank monster cores. A little while later, Inoue tells Fan that they are almost out of the monster's lair, signaling the end of their perilous journey. As they approach the exit, Fan feels something brushing against his back, and Inoue thanks him for everything he did. She acknowledges that without his bravery, she likely wouldn't have survived the ordeal. Fan brushes off her gratitude, saying that he was simply saving his own life and that they've been through life and death together. There's no need for her to thank him so often. Inoue, slightly flustered, asks why he keeps calling her Miss Inoue if he doesn't want to show gratitude. Fan grins and replies that he'll just call her Inoue from now on. Suddenly, Z appears, laughing as he sees Fan and Inoue. He comments on how they managed to escape the subway tunnel, now accompanied by a few more people. He had just been about to go back and rescue them. Z mocks Fan, calling him cannon fodder and bringing up the monster-filled situation. Fan responds with a dismissive comment about Muji and his team, calling them mean freaks. Z, however, defends his team, saying that he fought his way through the monster hordes even while injured. He notes that this behavior is expected from someone like Inoue, who is the prodigy of the Mu family. Z mentions that his uncle, a prominent figure, had instructed him to lead the team and wait for them at the exit. He clearly understands Inoue's strength and doesn't underestimate her. Inoue, a little irritated by Z's attitude, says that once they get back, justice will be served to her family. She intends to hold them accountable for the things they've done. Z mocks Inoue, claiming that it's naive of her to think she can make it out alive. He reveals that he has been in love with her for quite some time and suggests they should enjoy her company before she dies. His orders are clear: seize them and crush the rat. He taunts that whoever kills Fan will be the first in line to enjoy Inoue. The attackers excitedly agree, with one stating that he will kill Fan and then see who can finish the job faster. However, Fan effortlessly defeats the attackers, declaring that they still don't understand who the true rat and cat are. Z watches in disbelief, unsure how Fan managed to overpower them so quickly. Fan calmly explains that, due to what Z did to him in the past, it's his turn to handle Z now. He instructs Inoue to stay back, assuring her that it will all be over soon. The attackers can't comprehend how Fan is so strong. They had assumed that Muley and Muchi, both shooting star warriors, had powers that should match or even exceed that of a shooting star warrior apprentice. Z speculates that Fan must be using the shooting star sword, which likely means his mental abilities have reached the mid-level of a shooting star warrior. Despite his doubts, Z orders his men to take advantage of Fan's reliance on the sword and shoot him down with ranged weapons. He believes that someone like Fan couldn't have suddenly started anew. But Fan activates his perception skill and destroys the arrows mid-flight, releasing a powerful aura that strikes down the attackers. Without hesitation, Fan closes the gap and confronts Z. Fan coldly tells Z that it's his turn now. Z, panicking, decides to flee, but Fan quickly catches up, slicing off Z's hand in one swift motion. Z screams in agony and begs for his life, offering to do anything in exchange for mercy. But Fan isn't moved, informing Z that if they were to fight to the death, he must kill him. Desperate, Z grabs an arrow and tries to strike Fan, calling him cannon fodder. But before he can make a move, Fan delivers the killing blow, ending Z's life. Later, as Fan and Inoue make their way out of the monster's cave, Inoue notes that the Mu family rescue team should be arriving soon. As if on cue, a jeep pulls up and a man emerges. It's Muin, the Mu family's butler. He is relieved to see Yue alive and well. Yue hands him a small note, telling him that it contains her contact details and that he should visit her when he comes to Jinhai City in the future. Fan reassures Yue that, upon arriving in Jinhai City, he will take care of the dog who had been causing trouble. Muin comments that Yue gave Fan her sword, implying that he doesn't think highly of him. Yue protests, explaining that Fan and she are simply teammates who have been through a lot together. Muin, skeptical of Fan's true nature, thinks that Yue is too innocent and that Fan must have deceived her. Elsewhere, Hanhu and a man arrive too late. The man informs him that Yue and Fan were picked up by Mulan, and they may be the ones responsible for killing young Master J. Hanhu vows vengeance, swearing that he will never forgive them. Later, in a helicopter, the chief correspondent and another man discuss the treatment of prisoners in the Zhongbei City prison. The correspondent is curious about a particularly notorious inmate, the traitor, Zuohu. The man assures the correspondent that Zuohu's cell is the worst in the prison. Inside the cell, Zuohu hears voices discussing his transfer to a better location. Meanwhile, Fan arrives at the prison, determined to force his father to tell him the truth. As he approaches the prison, he notices a structure above it. It's a high-security facility called Sky Prison, where the most dangerous criminals are kept. This leads him to wonder if his father's connection to this place is what has led him here. Fan pushes through the guards and shouts for his father, surprising everyone. He battles the guards, thinking that no one has ever escaped the prison, but he must clear his father's name. Suddenly, a girl attacks him, and Fan barely manages to block her sword. She taunts him, questioning if he was really able to block her attack. She warns him to leave, but Fan refuses, telling her to get out of his way. As she continues to press her assault, Fan realizes that her strength and speed are superior to his. Without his perception skill, he wouldn't have been able to block her strikes. The senior correspondent notes that Fan is hiding his true powers, just like his father did. The girl, continuing her attacks, forces Fan to block and parry with all his might. After a brief exchange of blows, Fan realizes that to defeat her, he must activate the resonance with his sword. The girl is pushed back, but neither is seriously injured. However, Fan's sword is shattered in the process. The senior correspondent comments on Fan's potential, but adds that it's a shame he's the son of a traitor. Fan is given 1 minute to say goodbye to his father. As he approaches Zuohu, his father reveals that the truth about the fall of the city of S lies with the military base in Jennings City. The evidence is locked in a safe there, and only with limited access can it be retrieved. Fan is shocked by this revelation. Later, in Zhongbei City, Fan is sleeping when an alarm blares. He groggily wakes up, realizing that he's still adjusting to his new strength. He checks his phone and receives a call from Uncle Gao, who reminds him to come by for the things he prepared. As Fan dresses, he jokes about running into aliens. Uncle Gao isn't amused, but he comments on how much Fan has grown, now an average shooting star warrior. Uncle Gao reveals that he has prepared the necessary documents for Fan's trip to Jennings City. But Fan must be cautious, as the military there is highly guarded. Fan thanks Uncle Gao for all the help over the years. Uncle Gao reminds him not to overdo things, explaining that he's only helping because Commander Zuohu helped him in the past. Fan bows and tells Uncle Gao that once he finishes his tasks, he will definitely return to visit. He is leaving now. Gao recalls all the stages of Fan's growth, from the little boy to the present day. He thinks that this brat should definitely come back sometime later. Fan mentions that Uncle Gao even booked tickets for him. The ticket is valid for 5 days, giving him enough time to prepare. He plans to go to the mall and repair the shooting star sword using the core of a mutated monster. Fan thinks about the countless experts working at the Jennings City military base. With his current strength, he wouldn't be able to easily deal with them, so he needs to focus on getting stronger as quickly as possible. In addition to recovering the shooting star sword, he also needs to train in martial arts. There are many monster caves in Jennings City, which makes it perfect for him to take on missions and hunt E-rank monsters to gain stat points. Fan's phone rings, and it's Li Wei from Zhongbei City. Fan asks what made him call, and Li Wei replies that he should not call him Brother Wei anymore, but Brother Li. Li Wei asks where Fan has been for the past few days, as he's been calling him many times. He wants to know if Fan is free today. so they can meet up tonight along with his sister-in-law, Lugia. Fan agrees, saying they will meet at their usual place. He just made some money, so he will treat them both. Li Wei agrees, and they arrange to meet later. Fan reflects that Li Wei is just an ordinary person by strength. He thinks it's still early, and he must go to the mall to restore the shooting star sword. After Fan's father's accident, Li Wei was his only childhood friend. Li Wei protected him, shared food with him, and even helped with renting a house. Fan must leave the city in 5 days. At the bus stop, a voice announces that they have arrived at Jiangbei City Mall, and passengers must leave in an orderly manner. As Fan approaches the mall, he sends 2 novice shooting star warriors for perception testing, which allows him to assess other people's strengths. This ability is very useful. When he encountered that woman in the past, he couldn't fully appreciate her strength. Could it be because her rank was higher than his? In today's society, the status of shooting star warriors is rising. Recent data shows that people often choose shooting star warriors as partners. After all, during a monster wave outbreak, anyone would feel much more confident with a shooting star warrior by their side. Upon entering the mall, Fan notices that there are still quite a few people around. His first priority is to sell the materials he collected from the fish lizards. The prices for E-rank monster cores can reach millions, and the mutated monster core from a 2-headed monster gator can probably sell for tens of millions. While expensive, there is no real market for them, and demand is low. If he could sell the cores, he would become a millionaire. But instead, he needs to spend money to use the mutated monster's core to reforge the shooting star sword. Fan inserts the card into the terminal, and the transaction is completed. He sold the fish lizard materials for a total of 200,000 yuan. Fan thinks it's a shame because if he could bring in more fish lizard materials, he could have made $1 million. Now that he has some money, he'll spend it on a normal dinner tonight. In the background, someone asks if they can help. Fan turns around and spots Lugia, who is at the level of an aspiring shooting star warrior. Lugia tells the man that he should go straight, turn left, turn right, then turn left 3 more times, and the toilet should be right there. Fan realizes that Lugia is at the level of an aspiring shooting star warrior. Some time ago, Li Wei mentioned that he met his sister-in-law, and Fan soon finds out that Lugia had just gotten a job at the mall. However, he didn't know she was a shooting star warrior. It seems she learned about his situation from Li Wei and decided to hide her power from him so as not to upset him. Currently, Lugia is on the phone and says she will go right away. Fan decides to greet her later when they meet at dinner. At the store, the girl apologizes to Fan and mentions that Zhongbei is just a 3rd-tier city. The best blacksmiths in the mall are only middle tier. Only advanced blacksmiths can use the cores of E-rank mutated monsters to reforge weapons, and unfortunately, he'll have to go to a bigger city for that. Fan agrees, saying he understands. He thinks it looks like he'll have to wait until he reaches Jennings City to check out the mall there. The girl apologizes again for not being able to help, and when Fan leaves, she says that the novice shooting star warrior brought in the core of a mutated E-rank monster and wants to reforge a weapon with it. She thinks it's very cheeky. The man asks how an aspiring warrior can have something so valuable, and the girl mentions that maybe Fan is just an errand boy. She looked at his ID card and sees that he just passed the aspiring warrior exam. She says he can forget about the mutated E-rank monsters. F-rank monsters could easily kill him. The other girl asks about the core of the mutated E-rank monster and reforging the shooting star weapon. The girl and the man turn around, and their faces show fear. The girl runs out and calls for the sir to wait. Fan asks if the advanced blacksmith has arrived from another city. Later, in the office, the girl asks if she heard correctly. He wants to use the core of a mutated E-rank monster to reforge a shooting star weapon. Fan wonders, is she such a young lady? She sent a consultant to talk to him? How selfish is this advanced blacksmith? This girl is Junyon, 20 years old, with an unknown strength. Nyan asks if Fan has made up his mind. He should give her the core of the monster, and she will appreciate it. Fan asks if that isn't rude. The blacksmith should come personally to discuss taking on this job. There's a silence in the room, and Nyan remains silent as she shows a card that says Advanced Blacksmith. Fan apologizes and thinks she's an advanced blacksmith. Even beginner blacksmiths here are middle-aged men in their 30s or 40s, and she doesn't even look much older than him. Nyan asks if he can let her evaluate the monster's core now. If the E-rank mutated monster core is fully preserved, she will charge only for the material, not for reforging. Fan thinks that the fee for reforging an E-rank shooting star weapon is at least 100,000 yuan, not to mention the core of a mutated monster. This is an extremely profitable opportunity. Fan finds a box with a core in his backpack, which he eagerly shows to the blacksmith, Nyan. Upon inspecting the core, Nyan notes that it's the real core of an E-rank mutated monster, and surprisingly, it's in remarkable condition. The core is full of energy, indicating that the monster was killed in a fierce battle, rather than being ambushed or poisoned. Fan is impressed by how much Nyan can deduce from the core alone. He asks if this level of knowledge is an advanced blacksmith skill, to which Nyan responds that she is quite pleased with the core's quality. She's ready to take on the job, but questions if the real owner of the monster core will come to discuss the details in person. Fan finds Nyan's remark oddly familiar, and he agrees that it would be appropriate for the owner to speak with her directly. However, Nyan sharply points out that Fan himself is the one who killed the monster. She laughs, clearly not buying Fan's story, and states that she doesn't have time for his foolishness. She insists the owner must come, and Fan, although insistent, tries to explain once more. Nyan isn't moved, questioning his skills with a mocking tone, asking if Fan, despite being young, truly thinks he could have killed an E-rank monster. She explains that she's already reached the highest category of casters, and defeating a monster like that is nothing out of the ordinary. Nyan then offers Fan a chance to follow her and test his abilities. She explains that after the advent of shooting star equipment, the art of forging weapons flourished, and the status of blacksmiths, especially those who could forge shooting star equipment, rose significantly. But, she warns, only a few true masters can craft such weapons. Inserting a monster core into the weapon, particularly a beast core of such a high level, is no easy feat. Fan, intrigued, listens as Nyan continues. She adds that if there are enough materials, forging a sword is simple, but when it comes to using the core of a beast, especially one of the level Fan has, it becomes far more complex. The blade of the sword is nearly finished, but now it's time for the most critical step, the fusion of the core and the weapon. Fan is told that once the fusion process begins, the energy contained within the beast core will explode, requiring a strong fighter to subdue it instantly. If the one who defeated the monster is the one to perform the fusion, success is almost guaranteed. But if he fails to suppress the energy, the results could be disastrous, even fatal. Fan is not intimidated, assuring Nyan that he will manage just fine. He understands the risks, but is confident in his ability. Nyan then proceeds with the next step. As she inserts the core into the sword, an intense energy bursts from it, much like a monster being unleashed. Fan is told to immediately suppress this energy, focus his willpower, and channel his physical strength. Nyan further advises him to visualize the monster in his mind as if he were fighting it again. But Fan ignores her instructions and, with determination, begins to pour his energy into the sword. As the fusion progresses, Nyan observes with increasing interest. She realizes that Fan has indeed killed the monster himself. Only a true killer could cause the remaining traces of the monster's soul within the core to fear him, allowing him to instantly subdue it. She notices that Fan's strength far exceeds what is typical for someone of his rank. This prompts her to wonder, could he reach the middle category of fighters at his young age? Fan reassures her that he is even stronger than that. Nyan, now somewhat embarrassed for doubting him, apologizes for questioning his strength based on his age. Fan, in turn, is understanding, explaining that he also didn't fully believe in her skill at first. As the fusion is completed, Fan can sense two distinct powers emanating from the sword. Not only has the sword grown in power, but it also feels much lighter. The shooting star sword, now activated with the transfusion of the beast core, grants the wielder an additional 40 points in strength and dexterity. The sword's sharpness has increased, and a new property, Trample of the E-class, has been unlocked. With these upgrades, the sword has become much more powerful. Excited to test out the sword in combat, Fan eagerly asks Nyan what he should do next. Nyan, now considering their rapport, tells him that since they are now familiar with one another, he should call her older sister from now on, as she is older than him. In exchange, he will receive a 30% discount on all future work she does for him. Fan quickly agrees, and the two share a brief, light-hearted moment, with Nyan laughing and calling Fan a good brother for agreeing. She comments on his talent, saying he has a bright future ahead of him. As a token of their newfound connection, she gives him one of 3 black VIP cards, which grant special benefits at trade centers throughout the country, offering him exclusive privileges. Before they part ways, Fan realizes how useful the VIP card will be, especially for testing the sword in the local weapons testing area. This area is quite popular, with many people wanting to test their weapons, but with the card, he won't have to wait in long lines. It's the perfect opportunity to see how well the sword performs in battle. And that's a wrap for today's recap. If you enjoyed this dive into the story, make sure to hit that like button, share it with fellow manhwa fans, and subscribe for more exciting content like this. Don't forget to turn on the notifications so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.